Today, we will be reviewing the Mean Machine GPT, Expert Advisor by Mr. William Brandon Autry. Stick around to the end to see if this is really a legitimate use of artificial intelligence. This Expert Advisor was originally brought to my attention by one of our clients at Prosperity Algo Solutions, so I'm quite excited to take a look at it, as this client is very experienced in the world of EAs. So we can kick off here on the sales page and see that this is, like many other MT5 expert advisors, clearly an AI-powered expert advisor. But where this one actually differentiates is that it goes far more into detail in regards to how the AI models are actually used. And this is the first time I've actually seen LLMs giving you instructions on how to actually use the LLM APIs. So because of this, I was actually extremely excited to look into it, because this may be a video and an analysis which we can all learn a lot from. So before we go a bit more into the blog page, which goes into detail about the strategy, we can just kick off here on the sales page to get an idea regarding how it works. And as the name suggests, my understanding is this runs a mean reversion based strategy, but where it really differentiates relative to many other mean reversion systems is it's using a collection of LLMs. Specifically, it's using OpenAI's ChatGPT, which we're all very familiar with, as well as the Claude model by Anthropic, as well as Google's Gemini. So these are all legitimate cutting-edge large language models which have many different applications. So I'm quite curious to see how the author is effectively using them here. To go through a few more of these points, along with the LLMs, he's also mentioning that they have like an inbuilt neural network being trained within the Expert Advisor, which is quite exciting because if everything is as it seems, there's a combination of LLMs as well as more like a localized neural network which is being trained by the Expert Advisor. And in terms of the actual pairs which it runs on the classic mean reversion pairs of Aussie CAD, Aussie New Zealand dollar, and New Zealand CAD. And in particular, my absolute favorite pair for any sort of mean reversion based system tends to be the Aussie dollar and New Zealand dollar. Very simply, the economies of Australia and New Zealand are very closely linked. They are neighbors and major trade partners. Therefore, as a mean reversion premise would suggest, if there's a significant deviation in the price of the Australian dollar to the New Zealand dollar, typically that's an abnormality and they will revert back to each other. And that's why you don't tend to see super long-term trends in the Aussie dollar and New Zealand dollar, making it and currencies like it very well suited to these types of strategies. In terms of the Aussie CAD and the New Zealand CAD, here we go into like the all commodity currencies. Australia, big in mining. I'm Canadian. We are a large energy producer. New Zealand is a large soft commodities producer, as well as Canada as well, with the with our wheat exports and the variety of our agricultural commodity exports. And all of these fundamental factors make these currency pairs ideal for mean reversion systems. So just based on like the recommended choices, we can see that the developer understands how to develop a good mean reversion system. But we still have a lot to see regarding more the AI elements. So here we can see that they're showing the models, they're showing some images from the backtest. And here it appears that when the system runs, it's looking for effectively a sentiment analysis from the three different models, and then it's using it as a filter. Okay, let's now just quickly hop over to the live signal page, and we can see up here that so far so good. And to date, it's been running for 2 months, and the curve is looking very solid. And 81.4% in profit trades, 28% return, so very good. And it's running a variety of more mean reversion type currency pairs. Well, there are a few more trending ones like USD yen, which is quite interesting indeed. A lot of mean reversion systems do tend to be grid martingale systems as well. So I am looking for lot scaling here. We are seeing that when it's about to take a loss, in a few places here, it's also scaling lot size. So yes, loss, and these three close at the same time. Yeah, okay. So that's usually a good telltale sign of grid martingale. So here we can see when a loss occurred, there's also a winner which occurred at the same time. And if we look at close times, 1, 2, 3, this would indicate that we're closing in a grid. We can go up here too. So we have a negative, roughly a break even. So this is a 3-level grid where we go 1, open another trade when the trade went against us, and then open another one. And then these 3 would have closed, boom, 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 all at the same time. So yes, just by what I can see here with the trades, there is a bit of grid martingale going on, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So let's hop over to the blog description where they go even more in detail now. And this page from my previous quick skim really spoke in detail about how the AI models work. And I've already read this, so I'll go a little bit more into like the relevant subsections. But what we can see here is that it is using a recovery mechanism. So when it says one of the standout features is a special recovery algorithm, recovery is just a nicer way of saying a martingale grid aspect. So not necessarily a bad thing. Like it could very well be a perfectly solid system, but I would be very surprised if there isn't a grid martingale aspect here. But what gets extremely interesting here, and what makes this system very different than many other ones on the MQL5 marketplace, is that they actually ensure that you at least somewhat properly set up the different APIs to access the large language models. So if you scroll down here, he walks you through how to set up API access for ChatGPT, also how to set up access to the Anthropic Claude, as well as Gemini. And this is actually extremely neat because most developers on MQL5, which claim to use various AI models, they don't actually even give you a link to do a web request to the actual APIs. So obviously, if you don't even allow web requests to the API, there's no way that you're going to genuinely be using AI. But with this bot and with this developer, there is a difference. They are actually walking you through setting up how to use a large language model. And that's quite interesting. So excited to see a bit more. But one thing to note as well, and the developers mentioned this here, when you run backtests, unfortunately, just with how MetaTrader works, is you're not able to run web requests in the backtesting environment. And the problem with that is all of these various artificial intelligence models, you are unable to backtest yourself in the MetaTrader backtester. So that is something to keep in mind. So it could very well be a great implementation, but unfortunately, you cannot backtest it. And if we go back here to the sales page quickly, he is mentioning that unfortunately backtests are not indicative. Let me just do a quick search here. Backtest, yes. Backtests do not tell the whole story. Approximately 50% of mean GPT's functions cannot be captured in backtesting. So what the seller is saying is like, hey, because this is heavily relying on artificial intelligence models, he does not believe that backtesting is super indicative. And here, there is actually a reason as to why that might be the case. But unfortunately, you should always keep in mind, if you can't backtest it, that's very much not ideal. So let's hop over now into actually a couple AI models to show you guys how this works. So apologies, this might be a bit of a longer video today, but as this is a very interesting bot, I actually want to kind of get into the details a bit. So I've developed a system which is actually quite similar to this in the past. what I believe this bot is it's running a grid martingale mean reversion system on the Aussie dollar, New Zealand CAD, and Aussie CAD, and perhaps a few other currencies as seen in the signal page. But on top of that basic grid martingale system, it's also using a variety of machine learning filters to improve the win rate. And why this is super important is every time you run a grid martingale system, the more losing trades you have, so the lower your win rate is, the higher your odds of getting into a longer grid become. So let's say you have a 99% win rate on your first trade. Your odds of opening a big grid, so a grid with multiple levels, and if none of this makes sense, I encourage you to watch my video on grid martingale. So essentially, if your win rate is super high, your odds of opening a long grid is significantly lower. So I believe the author's hypothesis here, the developer's hypothesis, is by using a significant amount of machine learning to act as an additional filter, and that's where he's using OpenAI's ChatGPT, Gemini, as well as Anthropic's Claude. Those are acting as an additional filter, which should in theory improve the win rate and therefore reduce the odds of getting to a big grid, which significantly increases the risk of the account blowing. So, to actually kind of walk you guys through how this might look, I wanted to both show you how ChatGPT and Gemini would actually be able to analyze a chart. So here what I did is I took a screenshot of a gold chart and asked Gemini here effectively what it thinks. So I asked it, hey, is gold bullish or bearish here? And I found Gemini was actually less impressive than ChatGPT. But here it's providing a bearish trend filter. So the chart you provided shows a bearish trend for the following reasons, inclusive of candlestick patterns, moving averages, RSI. And similarly, I can also pull up ChatGPT. And if we go through ChatGPT here, we can see that I asked it something very similar, like, hey, is gold bullish or bearish here? And then it is providing a fairly interesting analysis showing that that it is indeed bearish. And then I also asked it, where Gemini did not give me a straight answer here, but ChatGPT did, is it more likely to go up or down? And then here, ChatGPT gave actually a very good answer back, where it said that based on the chart, it is more likely that the price of gold will continue down in the short term. So if I can quickly jump back over to our to our sales page here, we can look to see at his little description, which is being pulled from the MetaTrader terminal. And you can see that the various models are providing a sentiment analysis. So ChatGPT is bearish, Claude is bearish, and Gemini is neutral. So effectively here, what he's saying is that they're feeding open, high, low, close data to the models via an API, and they are then providing a sentiment analysis. So in terms of is this possible, absolutely. Effectively, what I just showed you via the models, you can do exactly the same thing via an API. It's really not rocket science. So actually implementing it live is very doable, but where I would be maybe like a pause of caution would be how effective the LLMs actually are at filtering out trades. And that's something which I personally don't know, but we'd have to do a bit more of in-depth testing for that. But it's definitely super interesting. So maybe for some context, I've actually developed an extremely similar system, as I noted before, but instead of using an AI, like an LLM-based AI, so large language model, ChatGPT, Claude, etc., I did effectively exactly the same thing, except the AI filter that I used was a decision tree. So in order to, before taking a trade, you would use a decision tree based machine learning model to effectively say, hey, this is more likely to be a winner, and that model would therefore improve your win rate and reduce your odds of entering a large grid and having a significant drawdown. So this actual premise makes sense, like a combination of mean reversion, recovery mechanisms, and AI filters, especially if you also were to include an equity stop loss. This could very well be a legitimate system, which is quite promising. But I will quickly run a backtest in MetaTrader as well, just to make sure that we are able to see how this works. So let me quickly run this backtest and come back to the video once it's done running. Okay, so we are now back with the results of the backtest. As we can see here in this graph, this is clearly a grid martingale system, and you can see that by these dips in equity relative to a flat balance line. But honestly, we were expecting this, so it's actually quite good that we are seeing these dips in equity, because if we were looking at a perfectly straight line, that usually indicates some degree of manipulation. And here, if you can look at the actual chart, we can see that this is clearly a grid system. So as it looked to go short here, but price went against it, it continuously opened shorts until they all closed at the same place. And we're seeing that multiple different places, where here, for instance, it tried to go long until eventually all the trades closed in one area. One caveat which I would say is that if the win rate here was significantly better due to the use of AI filtering, ideally the equity curve would be a lot prettier. So every time that it opens a big grid, we see this detachment of equity from balance. In theory, if you could significantly improve the win rate through the use of LLMs, this should look significantly prettier. Now I can just go and quickly run a visual backtest just so we can get an idea of how this will look. And we can see that it's running the Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar, and the Aussie CAD simultaneously. And let's just wait for it to get going here. Okay. Loading slowly but surely. Here we go. So we are now off. Let me perhaps fast forward so we can see if a larger grid opens. Okay, so let me go here where, oh no, it's still only one section, so I will keep going for a bit longer. I'm looking to see when multiple different grid trades open. Here we go. So here's an example of 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Then 3 of them closing at this level. And if we look at the indicators, there's an RSI, or standard deviation, and various ATRs, which makes sense. So these are, RSI in particular is quite often used as a mean reversion based indicator. So the good chance that that is what's being used here to actually act as a trigger. And the ATRs might either be being used as stop losses, filters, or they could perhaps even be being fed into the ML model. We can also see that it's opening up New Zealand CAD trades here. So this appears to be automatically running on New Zealand CAD, Aussie CAD, and Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar. So maybe to show you guys one more thing before wrapping up this fairly long review today is how I would perhaps suggest how you would go about backtesting a program like this. So I just wanted to show you a bit of code from when I developed a similar system. And effectively, how it works with any sort of AI model or most trading models in general is you want to do a degree of walk forward training and then testing. So you would train a model historically on a certain period of data and then test it on out of sample data and essentially run several different iterations to see how the model performs on out of sample data. With ChatGPT, you would not be training the model. The model is already pre-trained, as all of these LLMs are. So in order to actually test this myself, what I would do is effectively take the same setups that we're seeing and combine that with the AI API access via programming language such as Python, and then in a loop, you could effectively backtest the effectiveness of the API. Maybe going back to summarize here to go look at the actual, I guess we ran a new backtest, so we wiped the results. But effectively what I'm seeing is this is running a classic mean aversion grid martingale strategy were just being significantly enhanced using AI APIs. And what is very unique about this particular bot is that the developer appears to be making at least a significant effort, and it seems quite trustworthy that he's actually using the AI APIs. So I don't really have superstitions there or suspicions there. The area which I might suggest a bit more further thought is the actual effectiveness of large language models at improving the win rate of a trading system. That's just something that we would need to test. So in terms of the actual technical strategy, yes, that makes sense. It's following a tried and tested strategy. In terms of actually accessing the APIs, also appears to be very logical. But the one kind of point which I think requires a bit more further testing is to backtest the effectiveness of the LLMs to actually improve the win rate of the underlying technical strategy. And to do that, I would do some degree of further testing using like an actual like programming environment as opposed to just the backtesting platform, as you would be able to have a bit more control over the backtesting. But yeah, so that's effectively my review for today. But this is quite an interesting one, so I'd love to hear in the comments if you guys have had any further experiences with it, what your thoughts are, and it could perhaps be a very interesting avenue of research and development for all of us who can perhaps look to integrate LLMs into our strategy development and price prediction process. So thank you very much. Please leave me a comment and like and subscribe to the channel if this added value to you. Take care. Before you click away, if you're looking to get a real expert advisor, here at Prosperity Algo Solutions, we're currently offering our Golden Time Bomb system based on automating the London breakout and opening range breakout 100% for free. Watch the pinned video to find out more and to get access.